Welcome to a world where family ties aren't always what they seem, where every smile can hide a shadow, and where love's promises can shatter under the weight of betrayal. Here, nothing is simple. Weddings become war zones, silence becomes a weapon, and loyalty turns into shackles that suffocate instead of protect. Each story takes you behind the curtain of family drama, exposing forbidden affairs, shocking secrets, and the raw emotions no one dares to speak aloud. These are tales where a husband's hunger destroys trust, where a sister's betrayal rewrites destiny, and where revenge rises like wildfire, consuming everything in its path. If you think blood always means loyalty, prepare to be proven wrong. Every twist you'll hear here is a revelation that claws its way into the light, leaving scars that can never be hidden again. The first sign of unease came not in words but in silence. A wedding invitation never arrived, and whispers carried the truth louder than any spoken denial. A sister's voice, once warm, now sharpened like glass, cutting away with a warning. Stay away, don't come near. This union is not yours to witness. Such rejection wasn't born from love or protection. It was drenched in fear, a fear of what might surface if eyes were allowed too close to the groom. Behind closed doors, there had always been unease, glances that lingered longer than they should. Conversations that ended too abruptly when footsteps approached. The fiancé's smile was polished for family gatherings, but beneath the surface lay a secrecy that could not survive the light of day. He carried himself with charm, with the kind of easy laughter that disarmed suspicion, yet the air around him felt heavier than it should, as though guilt clung to his skin like a second layer. The refusal to attend the wedding spoke louder than any argument. Why would a sister ban her own blood from a day meant to celebrate unity, unless unity itself was built on a fracture? Each word of dismissal was like a warning not to peel back the veil, not to touch the fabric of truth. But silence only sharpened curiosity, and beneath curiosity smoldered something far more dangerous: resolve. The truth came uninvited, slipped through cracks like smoke. It wasn't whispered by strangers, but revealed in fragments, the kind only the observant collect when no one else pays attention. The fiancé was not a stranger at all. The husband, already bound by vows to another, had played his roles with precision. Husband at home, lover in secrecy, and fiancé to the one person who should have been untouchable. The betrayal cut deeper than blood can bleed. It wasn't only a husband's deceit, but a sister's complicity, weaving a web designed to erase bonds of family and rewrite them with poison. Each smile, each word of dismissal, each act of secrecy became proof of an unholy alliance. The silence demanded at the wedding was not protection but prevention, from seeing a truth that could tear apart every illusion. But silence has a way of breaking. Rage doesn't fade, it sharpens into clarity. Love once shattered does not beg, it calculates, and betrayal does not destroy without planting seeds of vengeance in the soil of the heart. Watching them try to weave a life from stolen promises and forbidden lies, the choice became clear: to let them believe the mask would never crack, or to make sure every guest, every friend, every family member witnessed the unraveling. The veil could not protect them forever. On the day meant to bind two souls, the truth stood taller than vows, sharper than rings, louder than music. And when it fell, it left no one untouched. The wedding ended not with promises, but with ruins. The smile looked harmless at first, the kind of easy grin that could charm a room without trying. It was the smile that convinced everyone he was perfect, the sort of man who seemed incapable of lies. But a smile can be a weapon, and his was sharper than any blade. Behind every polite gesture and rehearsed compliment, there lingered a shadow too dark to ignore. The more it appeared, the more it felt like a mask stitched too tightly over something rotten. At family gatherings, that smile never faltered. It stretched across the table as he passed dishes, as he offered stories about his promising future, as he played the role of the devoted fiancé. But the eyes didn't match. They flickered in ways that betrayed something else, a hunger that couldn't be hidden, a knowing look that felt all too familiar. There was no comfort in it, only unease that settled like a stone in the pit of the stomach. The truth always has a way of clawing its way out. It doesn't stay buried, no matter how carefully hidden. It began with small cracks, stray words spoken too casually, the slip of a name whispered at the wrong moment, and the unmistakable tension in the air whenever certain people were near. Every charming gesture began to look like a cover, every smile a shield protecting something that would not survive the light. The realization came like a knife to the chest. That man with the polished manners and flawless grin wasn't just someone else's fiancé. He was already a husband. He was the same husband who had once promised loyalty, the one who vowed never to stray. His betrayal didn't stop at broken vows. It stretched into family, crossing boundaries so twisted it made the very air impossible to breathe. The fiancé and the husband were not two men. They were one, playing two roles, living two lies, destroying two lives at once. It wasn't only betrayal, it was desecration. To sit in silence, to smile as if nothing were wrong, would have been its own kind of death. Rage didn't erupt loudly. It grew quietly, like fire spreading under dry leaves, waiting for the right moment to consume everything. Every glance at that shadowed smile became fuel. Every memory of whispered lies became kindling. Every thought of the wedding became the spark. The truth deserved to be seen, not whispered in corners or carried in silence. On the day that smile tried to charm its way through vows, the mask was torn away in front of everyone it had deceived. There was no laughter left in him then, no polished charm, no polished future, only the weight of shame that crushed harder than any promise could hold. The shadow behind the smile finally stepped into the light, and once seen, it could never be unseen. Promises of loyalty are easy to make when lips are sweet with affection. But hunger doesn't live in vows. It lives deeper, in places that no words can cage. A husband's hunger, once hidden, has a way of breaking through like cracks in glass. Maul at first, then splintering until nothing remains whole. That hunger didn't ask for love, it demanded conquest. It devoured trust slowly, until even sacred bonds felt fragile in his hands. There were nights when silence spoke louder than his words, when the way he avoided eyes told a story no one wanted to hear. The excuses grew rehearsed, predictable, and always arrived wrapped in tenderness. Work ran late. A friend needed help. Don't wait up. Yet each phrase carried the same weight, an emptiness that hollowed the air between two people who once swore to be one. The truth came not in dramatic bursts, but in fragments too sharp to ignore. A phone buzzing in the night, a slip of perfume that wasn't mine, laughter heard in the background of a call he swore was about business. Each piece by itself might have been forgivable, but together they formed a picture that no loyal husband could paint. Beneath his gentle hand rested a craving that loyalty could never satisfy, a need that sought out forbidden fruit even while wearing the ring of devotion. And the hunger was not distant. It was close, too close. It crept into family spaces, twisting the sanctity of kin into something unholy. To see him glance too long at the wrong person, to feel the shift in the air when my own sister entered the room, was to feel betrayal breathing down my neck. The wedding invitation withheld, the whispered warnings to stay away, the silences that followed every question. They all carried the same bitter truth. His hunger had crossed a line no forgiveness could mend. The rage that followed wasn't wild, it was calculated. Pain sharpened into clarity. If he could desecrate vows so easily, if hunger mattered more than loyalty, then the same hunger would be his downfall. Every lie became a weapon, every truth a blade, every silence a trap waiting to spring. The same promises he broke would become the chains that bound him when the truth spilled into the open. On the day his hunger was dressed in a tuxedo and disguised as love, the mask crumbled. The eyes of family and friends turned, the whispers rose into gasps, and his carefully constructed lies collapsed in front of everyone he tried to deceive. What was once concealed stood naked, undeniable, and unforgivable. The hunger that devoured trust ended by consuming him. Family is supposed to be the anchor, the bond that keeps storms from pulling life apart. But when loyalty turns into silence, and silence hides betrayal, those same ties become shackles. What once felt like protection becomes suffocating, pressing down with secrets so heavy that love itself begins to bend, twist, and finally snap under the weight. It started with whispers no one wanted to acknowledge. Averted eyes, half-finished sentences, relatives exchanging glances like they carried knowledge too dangerous to speak aloud. The questions piled up, but answers never came. Instead, the same refrain: don't ask, don't stir trouble, for the sake of family. The very people who should have spoken truth became guards of deception, and their silence held tighter than chains. The deeper the silence grew, the more it suffocated. The betrayal wasn't just in the man who broke vows. It was in the kin who knew and said nothing. Love was forced to bend, reshaped into tolerance for the intolerable, expected to endure in the name of family peace. But peace built on deception isn't peace at all, it's imprisonment. Each forced smile at gatherings, each suppressed word when his name came up, was another link in a chain that grew heavier by the day. The truth was venomous. The husband everyone praised for his charm, the man they welcomed into every circle, was feeding a hunger that reached beyond the vows he made. And the cruelest wound of all was knowing those closest, bound by blood, chose to protect him rather than expose him. A sister's silence was the loudest of them all, a silence that didn't just cover his betrayal but enabled it. What they didn't realize was that chains don't hold forever. The more they tightened, the sharper the need to break free. Each lie became fuel, each suffocating family dinner became fire. Each hushed warning not to disrupt became proof of how deep the rot had spread. The shattering point arrived not with anger, but with precision. If no one else would speak, then the truth would have to burn its way through on its own. On the day meant to celebrate unity, when vows were supposed to sanctify love, silence finally ended. Secrets once buried under layers of loyalty and denial were ripped open in front of every face that had turned away. The shackles broke, not gently, but violently, leaving scars on everyone who thought they could bind betrayal in chains. Family bonds that once promised safety revealed their true nature, not anchors, but prisons. And when they snapped, they left nothing but ruin in their place. Betrayal doesn't just wound, it ignites. What begins as shock settles into silence, but silence doesn't mean surrender. It waits, it hardens, it turns into something far more dangerous. Each lie spoken with a steady voice, each stolen glance that confirmed what should never have been, each secret sealed with the complicity of family. Every one of them was fuel. What once felt like heartbreak began to feel like fire, spreading with every discovery until it could no longer be contained. The husband who once swore loyalty played two lives with polished ease. At home, he was devoted, careful, tender in ways that could fool anyone who hadn't seen the cracks. Away from home, he was ravenous, reckless enough to cross boundaries so sacred they couldn't be undone. And the ones who knew who should have chosen honesty became accomplices through silence. The betrayal didn't come from one person alone. It came from a circle that closed ranks around his lies. That silence, though, became power. The restraint of saying nothing when every bone ached to scream was its own kind of preparation. Wounds that cut deep hardened into weapons, and every moment of suffering was stored like an arrow waiting for its target. Revenge didn't appear as rage. It grew in patience, in calculation, in the quiet hours where tears once fell, but now were replaced with plans. The storm built slowly with precision. Each move was measured, each truth collected like a shard of glass sharp enough to draw blood when revealed. He thought the hunger would remain hidden, that the charm and the mask would hold. He thought the silence meant safety, but silence was only the pause before the strike. When the day came, it was not with whispers, but with fire. The lies unraveled in front of the very people who once applauded him, who clapped their hands and praised his smile without ever questioning what it concealed. The storm broke open in their presence, exposing the affairs, the betrayal that reached into family itself, the deception no vow could cover. There was no blade sharp enough to cut as deep as the truth revealed aloud, no weapon more devastating than betrayal dragged into daylight. Revenge wasn't chaos. It was justice delivered in the same place where the lies had been celebrated. The mask slipped, and behind it was nothing but shame. Each wound inflicted by his choices became a blade that cut back at him, leaving scars that no apology could erase. What betrayal built, fire consumed. Weddings are meant to bind hearts, to gather families in joy, to create memories that will outlive the day itself. Yet this one was never built on love. It was constructed on silence, secrets, and forbidden pacts too fragile to withstand the truth. Every flower, every vow, every whispered blessing carried the weight of deception, and beneath the polished surface lay a storm waiting to break. The groom stood with a smile practiced to perfection, his voice steady as he promised forever. To those watching, he looked like devotion itself, but devotion was a mask. Beneath that suit, beneath that confident gaze, was the hunger of a man who had already broken what he was pretending to build. He wasn't simply pledging himself to a new bride. He was rewriting a lie he had already been living. The betrayal wasn't just hidden. It was dressed in silk and celebrated with applause. What no one expected was how fragile the ceremony really was. It took only a moment, one slip in timing, one truth revealed too boldly, and the facade began to crumble. The forbidden affair he tried to bury was no longer contained. It wasn't whispered in shadows or hidden in half-truths. It was dragged into the light, raw and undeniable. His promises, spoken in front of family and friends, collapsed under the weight of proof too strong to deny. The gasps that filled the room were louder than the vows. The bride's trembling hands, the faces of family twisted in disbelief, the silence that followed each revelation. It was the undoing of not just a wedding, but of everything sacred family bonds were supposed to mean. Those who had chosen silence as protection now stood exposed in their complicity. The carefully crafted illusion that had held everyone together was torn apart in an instant. The rage didn't need to be shouted. It lived in the calm precision of every word spoken, every truth laid bare in front of those who once closed their eyes. The ceremony meant to bind became a stage for exposure. The husband who carried himself as a man of honor was stripped of every ounce of dignity. His lies no longer whispered behind closed doors. They were displayed for everyone he had fooled, every family member he had betrayed, every soul who once believed his mask. What was meant to be a union ended as a reckoning. The wedding that should have begun a new chapter instead became the final page of every illusion, tearing apart not only love but the very definition of family itself. The day ended not with a kiss, but with ruin. If this story gripped you, don't just leave. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more untold family betrayals, shocking secrets, and unforgettable twists. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next revelation. Until then, remember, every secret has a way of coming out.